Karen Thompson was the kind of neighbor everyone dreaded. For 3 years, she walked around the neighborhood with a frown permanently etched on her face, hunting for violations like a bloodhound searching for criminals. Her daily routine was simple: wake up at 6 a.m., grab her camera and measuring tape, then patrol every house on Maple Street. Every tiny rule break was documented in her thick notebook. House 45. Trash can still out Tuesday morning 8:15 a.m. House 52. Grass appears 3.2 inches, exceeds maximum allowed height. But lately, Karen had found something more interesting than overlong grass or misplaced trash bins. A sleek black SUV had started appearing every weekend in the driveway of House 48. The vehicle was huge, with tinted windows that made it impossible to see inside. Karen spent hours watching from behind her curtains, trying to figure out who owned this mysterious car. Was it a criminal? A drug dealer? Her imagination ran wild with possibilities. Every Saturday and Sunday, like clockwork, the black SUV would pull up at exactly 9 a.m. Karen noticed it had out-of-state plates and what looked like extra antennas on the roof. She began documenting these visits with military precision, taking photos from multiple angles, noting the exact time the vehicle arrived and left, even measuring tire marks on the driveway. The owner of the house, James Johnson, was a quiet man who kept to himself. He worked as an accountant during the week and rarely spoke to neighbors. Karen had already written him up twice for minor violations, including leaving his recycling bin lid open during a storm. But this weekend visitor was something else entirely. The mysterious driver always wore dark sunglasses and casual clothes, walking into the house with purpose, but never staying more than a few hours. Karen's theories grew more elaborate each week. She convinced herself this was some kind of criminal operation. Maybe they were planning robberies of the wealthy neighborhood. Or worse, maybe it was a government conspiracy happening right under their noses. She started keeping a log of everyone who visited the house, including the mailman and occasional delivery drivers. One particularly hot Sunday morning, Karen positioned herself with binoculars at her bedroom window. She watched intently as the black SUV pulled up right on schedule. The driver got out, stretching his arms after the drive. He was a tall man with graying hair at his temples, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. Nothing about him screamed danger, but Karen knew appearances could be deceiving. As days turned into weeks, Karen's obsession grew stronger. She began timing her gardening to coincide with the SUV's arrivals, hoping to catch some evidence of wrongdoing. She noted that sometimes the man carried briefcases into the house. Other times he had what looked like folders. Her imagination painted pictures of illegal deals and secret meetings. Little did she know, her perfect target was someone far more powerful than she could have imagined, and her amateur detective work was about to lead her into serious trouble. The moment arrived on a bright Sunday morning when Karen decided she'd had enough of just watching. Armed with her foam camera and wearing her lime green HOA volunteer vest, she marched across the street toward the black SUV. The driver, the tall man with graying hair, was casually washing his car in the driveway, humming an old rock song while spraying soap suds over the hood. "Excuse me," Karen called out sharply, causing him to look up. "I need to speak with you about several violations." The man turned off the water hose and looked at her with mild curiosity. "Good morning. Is there something I can help you with?" Karen pulled out her phone and began reading from her notes. "Your vehicle is parked 6.2 inches beyond the driveway marking. According to HOA Guidelines Section 7.3, visitor vehicles must not extend past the designated parking area. This is your 7th weekend violation." The man, let's call him Mike, raised an eyebrow. "I see. I'm just visiting my brother for the day. I wasn't aware I was causing any problems." Problems. Karen's voice rose several octaves. "This isn't just about parking. I've documented 43 separate violations from this property in the past month alone." She scrolled furiously through her phone, showing blurry photos of imagined infractions. Mike crossed his arms, maintaining remarkable composure. "Look, I appreciate your dedication to the neighborhood, but I'm just here to spend time with my brother. Maybe we can talk about this calmly." But Karen was on a roll. She waved her finger inches from his face. "Don't you try to sweet-talk me. I know exactly what you're doing here. Those briefcases, the secret meetings, the out-of-state plates. I'm not stupid." Mike's brother, James, appeared at the door, looking alarmed. "Everything okay out here?" "Your visitor is in clear violation of multiple HOA regulations," Karen announced proudly. "Section 7.3 for parking, Section 12.5 for visitor duration limits, and possibly Section 15.2 for suspicious activity." Mike glanced at his brother with a small smirk that infuriated Karen even more. "It's fine, James. Just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? Misunderstanding." Karen was practically purple with indignation. She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "I have documented proof, photos, timestamps, measurements." She began unfolding page after page of printed evidence, including several blurry photos taken from her window. As Karen continued her tirade, other neighbors started to gather, some peering out of windows, others slowly walking over to witness the commotion. Mike remained calm, occasionally nodding as Karen cited increasingly obscure HOA rules. His patience only seemed to fuel her determination to prove her point. "And furthermore," Karen declared, reaching her grand final, "I have reason to believe unauthorized business activities are being conducted from this residence. The HOA board will hear about all of this at the next meeting." What Karen didn't realize was that standing before her was someone whose authority extended far beyond neighborhood watch rules, and her righteous crusade was about to take a very unexpected turn. Over the next few weeks, Karen's mission to catch the mystery man turned into a full-blown obsession. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., she positioned herself by her window with coffee and binoculars, waiting for any sign of movement at House 48. Her husband had stopped asking about her new hobby after she showed him her 200-page binder of evidence. The campaign started innocently enough. Karen printed neon yellow notices about HOA parking regulations and placed them on the SUV's windshield every weekend. "Dear visitor," the notes read, "you are in violation of neighborhood statutes. Please comply immediately or face consequences." She always signed them, Karen Thompson, concerned citizen, and HOA volunteer. But when the SUV kept arriving like clockwork, Karen escalated her tactics. She bought a measuring wheel from the hardware store and would roll it across the driveway at odd hours, claiming she needed to verify measurements for her reports. Neighbors watched from their windows as she'd measure the same spot multiple times, scribbling furiously in her notebook. By week 3, Karen had expanded her surveillance to the backyard. She discovered James had hung a bird feeder near his patio, 14 feet from the fence line, when regulations clearly stated 15 feet minimum distance. "Aha," she thought, adding it to her growing list of violations. She took photos from every angle, even climbing on a stepladder for better shots. Her investigation techniques became increasingly creative. Karen started leaving her garbage out overnight, just to see if the mystery visitor would notice her testing HOA rules. She positioned garden chairs facing House 48, claiming she was bird watching, while actually tracking comings and goings with an old stopwatch. One afternoon, Karen noticed unfamiliar sounds coming from the house. The click of keyboards, muffled voices through open windows. Her imagination went into overdrive. "They're running some kind of operation," she declared to her reluctant husband. She began timing the sounds, noting peak hours between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. on weekends. The breakthrough came when Karen spotted what she believed was the smoking gun. One Saturday, she saw James carry in boxes marked "confide into IL," while the mystery man helped unload file folders from his SUV. "I knew it," Karen practically shouted, nearly dropping her binoculars. "They're hiding something important." By Sunday evening, Karen had convinced herself she'd uncovered a major conspiracy. She spent hours crafting an email to the entire HOA board, complete with timestamps, photo evidence, and her detailed theories. The email ran 12 pages long, with colorful charts and arrows pointing out supposed violations. She hit send at 11 p.m., imagining the shocked faces of board members reading her explosive exposé. What Karen didn't realize was that her overzealous detective work had not gone unnoticed. The man she'd been following had seen every note, every photo taken from across the street, every dramatic measurement session. Her crusade was about to reach its peak, and soon she would discover that sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unusually warm for the season. Karen had taken the day off from her library job, claiming she needed to attend to urgent neighborhood business. She positioned herself at her kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee and her laptop, ready for another day of investigation. Around 2 p.m., she noticed movement at House 48. Both James and his weekend visitor were there on a weekday. Now this was unusual. From behind her sheer curtains, Karen watched as the two men stood in the driveway talking. They seemed to be reviewing some paperwork together. Her heart raced with excitement. Finally, she thought, I might catch them in the act of whatever they're doing. She grabbed her camera and snapped a few photos through the window. Then she noticed something that made her gasp. The garage door at House 48 was slightly open, just enough to slip under. The men had gone inside the house, likely through the side door. This was her moment. Karen reasoned that if they were conducting business from the garage, she had every right as an HOA volunteer to investigate. After all, she was just protecting property values and ensuring compliance with residential zoning laws. Karen quickly threw on her jacket, grabbed her phone for evidence, and hurried across the street. She looked both ways to make sure no neighbors were watching, then casually walked up the driveway. Her hands shook slightly as she ducked under the partly open garage door. I'm just doing my due diligence, she muttered to herself. Once inside, Karen's eyes adjusted to the dim light. The garage was surprisingly organized. Against one wall stood a workbench with various tools. Metal cabinets lined another wall, all locked tight. But what caught her attention were the boxes, dozens of them, some marked with official-looking stamps and labels. Karen began snapping photos with her phone, careful to capture everything. She opened unlocked drawers, looking for evidence of whatever illegal activity she imagined was taking place. In her excitement, she barely noticed the soft beeping that had started when she entered, the security system announcing an intrusion. As she rummaged through an unlocked shelf, her fingers brushed against something official-looking. It was a folder marked EVIDNC, KAZFI. EDOs. Karen's pulse quickened. I knew it. They're involved in something serious. She opened the folder and began photographing its contents. That's when she noticed the alarm had changed from beeping to a steady wail. In the distance, she heard what sounded like sirens approaching. Karen panicked. She had been so focused on her investigation that she'd ignored all the warning signs. The sirens grew louder, and fear gripped her as she realized she was caught in someone's garage without permission. Her mind raced. Should she run? Hide? Try to talk her way out? The wailing alarm filled her ears as she stood frozen between the boxes and cabinets, suddenly aware that her obsession with neighborhood rules had led her to break the most basic law of all. The sirens were definitely coming closer now. Karen's hands trembled as she tried to stuff the folder back onto the shelf, but in her panic, she dropped it, scattering papers across the garage floor. She scrambled to pick them up, her eyes darting frantically at the messy pile of documents. That's when certain words jumped out at her. POLC Department. KACEVIDNC. CHIEFOF. Her heart dropped into her stomach. No, 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 this couldn't be right. She grabbed another paper that had fallen, and there it was in bold letters. Chief Michael Reynolds, City Police Department. The photo ID attached to the document showed the same face, the mystery weekend visitor, the man she'd been harassing for weeks. Oh no, Karen whispered to herself, feeling her knees go weak. The sirens were now right outside the house. Blue and red lights flashed through the gaps in the garage door. Her mind raced with the implications. She'd been investigating, photographing, and accusing the city's police chief of criminal activity. Worse, she'd broken into his brother's garage. The sound of car doors slamming made Karen jump. Heavy footsteps approached, and she could hear radio chatter. 10 to 23. Arrived at location. Signal indicates intruder still inside. Karen recognized that voice from weeks of eavesdropping. It was the mystery visitor himself, speaking with official authority. Panic gripped her as she realized there was no way out. The garage had only one door, and it was blocked by incoming officers. She looked around desperately for somewhere to hide, but the organized space offered no real hiding spots. Her legs felt like jelly as she tried to decide what to do. The side door to the garage suddenly burst open. Light poured in, silhouetting several figures. 2 uniformed officers entered first, flashlights sweeping the space. Behind them stood Chief Reynolds. Mike, looking surprisingly calm and collected. He was now wearing his police jacket, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Found her, Chief," one officer called out, spotting Karen cowering behind the workbench. Karen watched in horror as more officers filed into the garage. She recognized some of them from around town. Officers Peterson and Baker, who usually directed traffic at the school. They all stared at her with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. The woman who'd been sending complaint letters to the station about various neighborhood issues was now caught breaking into the police chief's garage. "Karen Thompson?" Chief Reynolds asked, his tone professional but tinged with recognition. "We need to talk." Karen's throat felt dry. She tried to speak, but could only nod weakly. The reality of her situation crashed down like a ton of bricks. All those weeks of surveillance, accusations, and investigations had led her here, caught red-handed by the very person she'd been trying to expose. The evidence she'd tried to photograph now looked back at her from the scattered papers on the floor, each one stamping out her amateur detective theories with cold, hard facts. Karen slowly stood up from behind the workbench, her legs shaking. Chief Reynolds stepped closer, his face a mix of concern and slight amusement. He'd been through countless tense situations in his career, but this one was certainly unique. "Karen, I need you to step out of the garage," he said gently but firmly. The officers made space for her to walk out. As she passed them, she caught their expressions. Most were trying hard not to smile at the situation. Here was the neighborhood's most vocal critic, caught breaking into the police chief's garage. Once outside, Karen blinked in the bright sunlight. 3 police cruisers sat in the driveway with lights still flashing. Neighbors had come out of their houses, watching the drama unfold. Karen spotted Mrs. Wong from next door, the Hendersons from across the street, and even old Mr. Gregory, who never left his porch. They all whispered to each other, pointing and shaking their heads. Chief Reynolds pulled out his notepad. "I'm going to need to document this incident," he said calmly. "Karen Thompson, you've been seen entering this property without permission. The security system recorded your entry at 2:47 p.m. Can you explain why you're here?" Karen's mind went blank. How could she explain weeks of paranoia, accusations, and amateur spying? I thought. "I was protecting the neighborhood," she stammered. "I didn't know you were. I thought something illegal was happening." Officer Peterson stepped forward. "Ma'am, did you really think the police chief was running some kind of criminal operation from his brother's house?" His tone was respectful, but Karen could hear the disbelief. "I didn't know he was the police chief." Karen protested, her face burning with embarrassment. "He only comes on weekends in casual clothes. How was I supposed to know?" Chief Reynolds sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Karen, I've received all your emails to the department. 23 in the last month alone. Each one more detailed than the last about my suspicious weekend visits." The gathered neighbors murmured among themselves. Karen's reputation as the neighborhood watchdog was crumbling before their eyes. Mrs. Wong whispered loudly to her friend, "I told you she went too far with all that spying." "What exactly were you looking for in the garage?" Chief Reynolds asked, genuinely curious. "Evidence," Karen mumbled. "I thought those boxes contained—" "I don't know. Stolen goods or something." "Evidence boxes," the chief clarified. "From closed cases I review at home, with proper security clearance, which you don't have." He looked at his officers. "Bag everything she touched as evidence. We'll need photos of the scene." Karen watched in horror as her small act of trespassing turned into an official police incident. Officers began taking pictures while another started reading her rights. The words echoed in her mind. "You have the right to remain silent." As they led her to the patrol car, Karen caught sight of her house across the street, her carefully maintained garden, her perfectly aligned American flag, her HOA volunteer sign. Everything that had defined her now felt meaningless. The irony hit her hard. She'd been so busy playing neighborhood cop that she'd become an actual criminal in the eyes of real police. The following morning, local news crews lined up outside the police station. By noon, the story exploded across social media. Neighborhood watch queen caught breaking into police chief's garage. The memes started immediately. Pictures of Karen's lime green vest photoshopped onto prison uniforms. Jokes about measuring the dimensions of jail cells. At the courthouse later that week, Judge Martinez reviewed Karen's case. Breaking and entering typically carried serious consequences, but after hearing both sides, he offered Karen a choice: 30 days in jail or probation with mandatory community service and anger management classes. Karen chose probation, understanding she'd gotten lucky. The HOA held an emergency meeting 3 days after the incident. Board President Robert Chen addressed the packed community center. "We need to discuss the events on Maple Street and our enforcement policies moving forward." The room buzzed with nervous energy. Karen sat in the back row, eyes downcast, while Chief Reynolds attended as a concerned resident. "Our volunteer program needs changes," Chen continued. "No more solo patrols, no more measuring driveways at 5 a.m., and absolutely no amateur detective work." He looked pointedly at Karen, whom nodded in agreement. The board voted to implement new guidelines: 2 volunteers per patrol, designated reporting hours, and clear boundaries for what constituted actual violations. 2 months passed. Karen began her anger management sessions, where she learned breathing techniques to control her impulses. Meanwhile, Chief Reynolds started giving community talks about proper neighborhood watch procedures. During one presentation, he showed photos of incorrect ways to report suspicious activity, including a blurred picture taken from far away at night. The audience laughed, understanding the reference. On a Saturday afternoon, Karen encountered Chief Reynolds at the grocery store. Both stopped in their tracks, groceries in hand. After an awkward moment, they both started talking at the same time. "Chief, I'm sorry." "Karen, how are you?" They laughed nervously. Chief Reynolds gestured for her to speak first. "I wanted to apologize again," Karen said sincerely. "I was completely out of line. I hope you can forgive my behavior." "Already forgiven," he replied kindly. "We all make mistakes. I hear you're doing great in your community service." Karen nodded, brightening slightly. "I help at the senior center now. No measuring tapes or binoculars involved." Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Karen began channeling her observational skills into positive activities. She organized a real neighborhood watch program that actually worked with the police department. Chief Reynolds became her mentor, teaching proper protocol for reporting genuine concerns. 6 months later, the story became local legend. Karen Thompson became known as the woman who learned her lesson the hard way. She kept her HOA volunteer vest, but wore it with humility instead of authority. Young homeowners moving into the neighborhood heard the tale as a warning. Be a good neighbor, but remember your limits. The incident changed Maple Street forever. Residents learned to appreciate actual community values over rigid rule enforcement. And Karen, She discovered that being helpful didn't require being hostile, and keeping neighborhoods safe worked best when everyone cooperated with, rather than competed against, actual law enforcement. The story spread across suburban America, shared at HOA meetings and backyard barbecues, always ending with the same moral: sometimes your